Before sunrise, while most of Britain slept, King Charles sat beneath a single lamp, with an emergency order placed before him. Camilla's name appeared on the first page. Princess Sophie's appeared on the last. Then came the word that shattered the silence. Enough. Charles lifted his pen and signed, transferring one of the Queen Consort's most influential palace responsibilities to the woman few had expected to replace her. By breakfast, the monarchy had already changed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles read the final paragraph 3 times. His private secretary stayed silent as the monarch held the pen above the page, trapped between duty and the woman he had defended for years. At 5:42, he signed an emergency household order, binding palace instruction that changes responsibilities inside the palace. It removed Camilla as principal coordinator of royal representation during his absences, and gave Sophie that authority immediately. The decision reached beyond appearances. Sophie would control ceremonial scheduling, settle clashes between senior households, and choose which working royal represented the crown when the king could not attend. That power mattered, because it determined who carried his voice privately and who stood for the monarchy at national moments. Charles was shifting power. The king knew the order would strike Camilla as betrayal. He had promised to protect her place, yet he acted without calling her. Enough, he whispered, then set down the pen. His secretary collected the pages, while the monarch stared ahead, knowing the silence would become a family crisis. Shortly after 7, Camilla received a sealed folder in her sitting room. She opened it standing, expecting another briefing. Queen Consort reached the final page, saw Sophie's name, and lowered herself into a chair. Humiliation hardened into anger when she realized the decision was active. No discussion remained. No appeal had been offered. Confidential annex, a restricted attachment with extra instructions, deepened the blow. Palace staff had to transfer briefing files, ceremonial correspondence, and access codes to Sophie before noon. Speed proved that Charles intended no symbolic warning. He had ordered a lasting change. Sophie entered through a side entrance before dawn. She had not requested Camilla's authority, and she felt no triumph in receiving it. Yet Charles believed the trusted confidant had the discipline and restraint needed to steady a divided family. Before accepting, she had to face the woman whose role had been taken. The ink had dried before the palace awoke, but behind one closed door, Camilla was already preparing the words she would use when Sophie entered the room. The dawn order carried 3 names, but behind those names stood 3 very different battles. Charles was protecting a reign he feared was becoming divided. Camilla was confronting the loss of influence she had spent years building. Sophie was being asked to accept power she had never publicly pursued. None of them could escape the personal cost. Before the confrontation began, each understood that the order was not simply about duty. It was about trust and who still possessed it. Charles had spent years trying to protect 2 worlds at once. The king wanted stability for the monarchy, but he also wanted peace inside his marriage. Crown, the institution representing the sovereign and the royal family's public duty, could not survive endless private conflict, spilling into official decisions. He had defended Camilla through criticism, hostility, and doubt, yet the emergency order proved that loyalty had finally reached its limit. Camilla did not see a correction. She saw betrayal. Sitting beside an untouched breakfast tray, the Queen Consort folded the document once, and again, forcing her hands to remain steady. To her, Charles had not simply transferred a responsibility. He had chosen Sophie's judgment over hers. And worse, he had done it without giving her the chance to fight for the role she believed she had earned. Sophie felt no victory. A trusted confidant understood that influence inside the royal family could become a brace the moment others believed it had been taken from them. When told the order was effective immediately, she asked whether Camilla had already been informed. Then she asked whether Charles fully understood what this appointment might do to his marriage. Her fear was not failure. Her fear was becoming the blade placed between husband and wife. William's position made the tension even sharper. Prince of Wales had known concerns existed over household coordination, meaning the system used to organize duties between senior royal offices. Camilla immediately suspected that he had encouraged his father to choose Sophie. William had not confirmed it, but his silence gave her anger somewhere else to turn. Charles kept the truth inside his desk. The monarch had written a private list of incidents in which royal decisions were delayed, altered, or redirected without his approval. Sophie's name appeared beside several of them because she had quietly repaired the damage without seeking praise. That record proved the Dawn Order had not been sudden. It had been building. One entry stood apart from the rest, referred to a state remembrance ceremony, a formal national event, honoring sacrifice, and a confrontation behind a chapel door. To understand why Charles finally lifted the pen, the story must return to the ceremony where Camilla crossed a line Sophie refused to ignore. Every palace rupture has a moment that later becomes impossible to forget. For Charles, it came during a national remembrance ceremony, behind a closed chapel door, less than 10 minutes before the procession began. Seating change had been made. Senior royal had been pushed aside. Sophie discovered the alteration and refused to obey it. What followed was brief, private, and devastating. The public saw a flawless ceremony. Inside the palace, the king saw the point of no return. Charles had agreed to conserve his strength that morning, leaving Sophie responsible for receiving the bereaved families before his arrival. The National Remembrance Ceremony, a formal service honoring those who had died in military service, carried enormous emotional weight. Grieving relatives had traveled across the country, expecting to be welcomed by the same royal named in their official arrangements. Any sudden change risked creating confusion at a moment when dignity mattered more than rank. Camilla changed the plan less than 10 minutes before the procession. Queen Consort instructed an aide to remove Sophie from the principal receiving position and place one of her preferred representatives there instead. She did not consult Charles. She did not alert the security team. What appeared to be a simple alteration threatened the approved protocol, the fixed order used to keep royal ceremonies organized, secure, and respectful. Sophie refused to move. Behind the chapel door, the trusted confidant told Camilla that the families had been promised continuity and should not become pieces in a struggle over status. The Queen Consort answered that the final decision belonged to her. Neither woman shouted. That made every word feel sharper. Charles arrived earlier than expected. King stopped outside the room, just as Camilla told Sophie that loyalty meant recognizing when to step aside. He entered slowly, his face drained of warmth, and asked his wife whether she had changed the approved plan. The Queen Consort hesitated. That silence gave him the truth before her explanation could begin. Charles reached for the revised seating card. The monarch tore it once, placed both pieces on the table, and restored Sophie to the receiving position. She carried out the duty without triumph, while Camilla completed the ceremony knowing the argument had not ended. The public witnessed perfect restraint. The family felt something breaking beneath it. Charles confronted his wife that evening. He asked Camilla to promise that no official schedule would again be altered without his consent. She refused to admit wrongdoing, insisting she had defended the dignity of her position. His anger faded into disappointment. Before midnight, the king summoned his private secretary and asked how Camilla's emergency authority could be transferred. The chapel incident created the order, but it was the meeting after sunrise, when Camilla and Sophie finally stood face to face, that turned a private decision into a royal confrontation. 9 minutes past 8, Sophie entered the Queen Consort's private drawing room without an aide beside her. Camilla was waiting near the fireplace, the Dawn Order resting on a table between them. There were no officials to soften the words, no courtiers to redirect the anger, no cameras to reward restraint. Two women had stood together through funerals, jubilees, and family crises. Now one had been stripped of authority, and the other had inherited it. Sophie closed the door and asked to speak before accepting the briefing files. Those files contained the schedules, private instructions, and official information required to coordinate the work of senior royals. She wanted Camilla to hear one truth directly. She had never campaigned for the position. She would never use it to cause humiliation. Trusted confidant offered respect. Queen Consort heard pity. Camilla did not thank her. She asked how long Sophie had known Charles intended to replace her. Question cut past ceremony and exposed the real wound. She was not only grieving the lost authority, she feared that her husband, his relatives, and palace officials had discussed her removal while continuing to smile beside her. Sophie answered that she had been summoned before dawn, but had not known the final decision until Charles explained it. Camilla stepped closer to the order, placed one hand across the first page, and spoke the words she had been holding back. "You accepted what was mine." Sophie felt the accusation strike, yet she refused to lower her eyes. "The authority belonged to the crown," she replied, "meaning the institution through which the monarch carries out public duty. It had never belonged personally to either woman." Her answer remained calm, but it destroyed Camilla's belief that rank gave her permanent ownership of the role. Camilla demanded that she decline the appointment. Sophie almost agreed. For one painful second, surrender appeared easier than becoming the weapon between Charles and his wife. Then she remembered the chapel door, the altered plan, and the bereaved families whose grief had nearly been pulled into a struggle over status. Sophie refused. She would not abandon a duty simply to protect another person's pride. Charles heard those words from the doorway. The king entered as Camilla demanded to know whether Sophie would now speak for him inside his own household. He looked first at his wife, then at the woman he had appointed, and understood that silence could no longer save anyone. Charles told Camilla that Sophie had been chosen because she used judgment without turning it into control. Then the monarch delivered the sentence she feared most. "I must be able to trust what happens when I am not in the room." Sophie left them alone, but before the door closed, she heard Camilla ask whether the order was temporary punishment or the beginning of her permanent removal from the center of the reign. Charles had transferred the role, but that question forced him to reveal whether the Dawn Order was merely a warning or the first move in a deeper restructuring of royal power. The document carried Charles's signature, yet one signature alone could not make the palace obey. Authority inside the monarchy moves through trust, access, memory, and the willingness of powerful people to recognize a new center of command. By noon, Sophie had the title. But did she possess the power? The answer emerged in a private council room, where William, Anne, Edward, and the king faced one another across a polished table and decided whether the Dawn Order would survive its first day. Charles understood the danger immediately. Senior households, the separate offices that organize each working royal's duties, would continue following old instructions unless the family accepted Sophie's authority. She needed William, Anne, and Edward to send emergency decisions through her office. Without their cooperation, the order would remain powerful on paper, but weak inside the palace. Edward found his wife before the meeting began. He asked Sophie whether she understood the personal price of accepting the role. Every success she achieved could be described as Camilla's defeat, and every mistake could be used to prove that the transfer had failed. A trusted confidant admitted she was frightened, yet she told her husband that refusing would leave Charles isolated when he needed dependable service most. William carried a different burden. Camilla already suspected that the Prince of Wales had engineered her removal, although he had never demanded that Sophie replace her. Before taking his chair, he warned the new coordinator that scrutiny would come from every direction. Sophie answered that fear could not be allowed to decide who served the crown. Charles opened the meeting without apology. The king said the monarchy could not function through competing orders, altered schedules, and private instructions that contradicted his approved plans. The new structure was protection, not revenge. One trusted coordinator would act whenever he was absent, ensuring that personal rivalry could no longer disrupt public duty. Anne remained unconvinced by words alone. Princess Royal pushed a ceremonial schedule across the table, containing 3 deliberate clashes. Precedence: the formal order determining where royal figures stand and who acts first had been arranged to create conflict. Sophie studied the pages. She moved Edward to one engagement, asked William to lead another, and preserved Anne's position without humiliating Camilla. Princess Royal closed the folder and gave one approving nod. That small gesture carried more weight than applause. William agreed first. Anne followed. Edward then confirmed that his household would recognize Sophie's instructions. Her consent transformed Charles's Dawn Order into real authority, supported by the monarchy's most active members. One chair remained empty. Camilla had refused to join them. While Sophie gained the family's confidence, the Queen Consort was deciding whether to attend the evening reception and whether she would publicly obey the woman now holding her former power. By midday, Sophie held the confidence of the working monarchy. The first true test would come that evening, and Camilla had to decide whether to stand beside her replacement. The first consequence of the Dawn Order did not arrive through another document. It appeared as an empty place beneath the chandeliers of a palace reception. Camilla was expected to greet the guests beside Charles. Sophie was expected to coordinate the royal arrivals from behind the line. But minutes before the doors opened, a message reached the king. The Queen Consort would not attend. Her absence was meant to express defiance. Instead, it revealed how quickly the new order could function without her. Sophie faced her first true test before the first guest arrived. Hundreds of charity leaders and civic representatives were expected at the reception. A formal gathering where members of the royal family recognize public service and national achievement. Then, a transportation delay forced two senior royals to change their arrival time. One disruption threatened the entire receiving line, because every greeting had been carefully arranged around rank, timing, and responsibility. Sophie did not panic. The trusted confidant moved Edward forward to welcome the delayed civic delegation and asked Anne to receive the military representatives. She changed the order quietly, protecting every royal position without making the emergency obvious. Edward accepted the instruction immediately. Anne asked one sharp question, heard the answer, and moved into place. The system held. Camilla made her choice upstairs. Queen Consort removed the brooch, selected for the evening, and placed it back inside its case. She told her dresser that she would not enter a room where another woman had been given authority to direct her. Her words sounded firm, but beneath them sat a deeper fear. Attending would mean accepting Sophie's power. Staying away would risk proving that her presence was no longer essential. Charles received the message moments before the doors opened. The king closed his eyes and gripped the back of a chair. He had expected anger, but not public withdrawal. Canceling the reception would turn a private dispute into institutional weakness, while continuing without his wife would expose the distance now growing inside their marriage. Charles refused to cancel. Then he asked Sophie to stand beside him for the opening greetings. She hesitated. The senior coordinator, the royal responsible for organizing who represents the monarch, was never meant to replace the queen physically. Yet an empty place beside the king would invite immediate questions. Sophie stepped forward. She greeted each guest without triumph, while Charles carried the evening with measured calm. Edward and Anne followed the revised program, and no confusion reached the reception. The event succeeded because the new structure worked exactly as intended. Camilla watched the silent internal broadcast alone. The Queen Consort saw Sophie completing the duties that had once confirmed her own importance. Her absence had not weakened the order. It had shown the palace could continue without her. That painful discovery broke Camilla's defiance. Before midnight, she requested a private meeting with Charles, without aides, folders, or royal titles between them. Near midnight, Camilla entered Charles's private room and closed the door herself. No secretary recorded the meeting. No courtier waited inside. The king was seated beside a dying fire, still wearing the clothes from the reception she had refused to attend. For the first time that day, there was no order on the table between them. There was only a husband, a wife, and the question both had avoided. Had Charles removed her dock authority because she failed the crown, or because he had stopped believing in her? Camilla did not demand that the decision be reversed. Queen Consort asked Charles to tell her exactly when he decided she could no longer be trusted. Her voice remained controlled, but the fear beneath it was unmistakable. Responsibility had given her more than influence. It had reassured her that she still belonged at the center of his reign. Charles returned to the chapel incident. King explained that changing the remembrance arrangement had been serious. It was not the final blow. Her refusal afterward to admit fault had changed everything. She had protected her position, instead of following his approved duty. And that choice threatened the trust required to carry out the work of the crown, meaning the monarch's official service to the country. Camilla finally admitted what had driven her. Years of hostility had left her terrified of becoming decorative, tolerated, and ultimately disposable. Each new responsibility had felt like proof that she had secured her place. When Sophie's standing grew, Queen Consort stopped seeing another woman's service as support. She began seeing it as a warning. Charles did not hide behind authority. The monarch admitted that he had failed as well. He had avoided confronting her because he carried guilt over everything she had endured beside him. By shielding Camilla from consequences, he had allowed fear and resentment to enter royal decision-making. His protection had become permission, and both of them had paid the price. Camilla asked the question that had haunted her since dawn. Would Sophie now replace her entirely? Charles answered without hesitation. Sophie would permanently retain the operational role, the responsibility for coordinating senior royal duties when he was unavailable. But the trusted confidant would not replace Camilla as his wife or as Queen Consort, the monarch's spouse who supports his public service. Distinction wounded her, yet it ended the uncertainty poisoning the room. Silence followed. Then Camilla agreed not to obstruct Sophie. She offered to attend the next morning's briefing and accept the new structure, even though she could not pretend to welcome it. Charles told her that private acceptance was not enough. Camilla had to face Sophie directly and acknowledge her authority before the palace could believe the struggle had ended. The private battle had finally changed direction. The monarchy's judgment would not be sealed until Camilla crossed the room, faced Sophie, and made her choice visible. By morning, the secret order had escaped the palace walls. Britain awoke to a front page dominated by 5 words. Sophie takes command at dawn. Broadcasters spoke of a royal demotion. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, and every gesture was examined for signs of war. Then, during the first official briefing under the new arrangement, one image changed the mood. Camilla crossed the room, extended her hand to Sophie, and remained beside her, while the cameras captured a monarchy choosing discipline over destruction. Charles knew silence would only make the crisis larger. A palace statement confirmed that Sophie had assumed responsibility for coordinating senior royal representation during his absences. Senior royal representation meant choosing and organizing which working family members would carry out duties for the monarch when he could not attend. The words were careful enough to protect Camilla from open humiliation, but firm enough to prove that the transfer was permanent and already active. The country reacted instantly. One leading newspaper printed Charles's silhouette beside an image of Sophie entering the palace, while television networks interrupted their schedules to explain the sudden shift in authority. This mattered because royal power usually changes through slow announcements and guarded language. This decision had arrived before dawn, revealing a level of urgency the public could not ignore. Sophie reached the palace under a storm of shouted questions. Trusted confidant paused inside the entrance when photographers called her the monarchy's new power behind the throne. Edward touched her arm and reminded his wife that Charles had chosen her to perform a duty, not to enjoy the spectacle. She steadied herself, but the attention made the responsibility feel heavier. Camilla faced a crueler arrival. The Queen Consort heard part of the crowd applauding Sophie's appointment, while others called the decision needlessly harsh. She could have remained inside her car. Instead, she stepped out, knowing that retreat would destroy the promise she had made to Charles only hours earlier. Tension followed them into the official briefing, private meeting, where royal duties and instructions are formally assigned. Charles remained silent, as Camilla and Sophie stood several feet apart. William watched closely. Prince understood that one refusal, one cold gesture, or one public rejection could reopen the entire conflict. Camilla finally moved. She crossed the room, extended her hand, and spoke clearly enough for everyone present to hear. You have the king's confidence, and you will have my cooperation. Sophie accepted without triumph. Trusted confidant answered with quiet respect, while Charles allowed himself one brief breath of relief. William lowered his guarded stare. The handshake was photographed, printed, and broadcast across Britain as proof that the visible rebellion had ended. The world had witnessed reconciliation, But only the king could deliver the final verdict on why the crown had demanded this painful sacrifice. The emergency dawn order began with anger, but it did not end in revenge. Charles had removed authority from the woman beside him, placed it in the hands of a trusted sister-in-law, and forced the royal family to confront a truth it had avoided for too long. Love cannot excuse disorder, and rank cannot replace trust. By the time the final briefing ended, Sophie's role was secure, Camilla's resistance was over, and the king had established the principle that would define his reign. Charles gathered the family for one final private council. The king confirmed that Sophie would remain principal coordinator of senior royal representation, the person responsible for organizing which senior family member would act for the monarch during his absences. The appointment was not temporary. It was not a public gesture designed to calm the scandal. The authority would remain hers after the headlines disappeared. Camilla kept a meaningful place beside her husband. The Queen Consort would continue supporting Charles at state occasions, representing royal charities, and carrying out the public work she had built over many years. But she would no longer control the schedules or assignments of other senior royals. That boundary ended the dangerous overlap between marriage, personal influence, and official command. Sophie accepted without celebration. The trusted confidant signed the acknowledgement of responsibility, while Edward stood beside her, offering strength without drawing attention from the moment. She then told Charles that she would serve only while the role strengthened the family, instead of raising her above it. The king heard no hunger for status in her words. He heard the restraint that had made him trust her. Camilla faced Sophie privately after the council ended. The Queen Consort admitted that jealousy had made her confuse influence with security. She had feared that another woman's success would make her own place smaller. Sophie did not demand humiliation or punishment. She offered respect, and both women accepted that cooperation could not erase the wound, but it could stop that wound from controlling the monarchy. Charles returned alone to the desk, where the crisis had begun. The monarch placed his handwritten record of altered decisions and broken instructions inside the official file, a permanent palace document, preserving the reasons behind his action. He closed the cover and locked it away. This time, the gesture did not hide uncertainty. It ended it. The monarchy emerged with a harder standard. Closeness to the sovereign could no longer guarantee unchecked power. Service required accountability. Responsibility had to follow competence. Even those nearest the throne remained answerable to the institution they represented. Charles's enough had never meant rejecting Camilla as his wife. It meant separating private devotion from public duty. Sophie gained authority because she never treated service as possession. Camilla preserved her dignity because she accepted a boundary she could not defeat. Family survived because the king acted before resentment became collapse. The order signed in darkness did more than shift a royal role. It brought the monarchy into the light, proving that the crown could protect both duty and family, but only when trust mattered more than pride. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.